Why are Japanese cards with little girls from the Pokemon series so expensive in Japan? Why can't you just answer the question?
Crap, man.
Who are you, my friend, and why are you joining me here today?
Hey, I'm Lugia, a Pokemon collector first and foremost, and I also run the website PokeGuardian.com.
You're the webmaster of PokeGuardian.
Yes, since 2019, I've created myself.
Primal Lugia has a YouTube channel. It is Primal Lugia. He opens up Japanese product there. He has a pretty good time.
However, I want to talk about some of the Japanese Pokemon card market.
I didn't ask you what you wanted
just a
to
brief
do.
introduction.
This is my video.
Okay.
This is my video.
Okay.
What do you want to talk about today?
I want to talk about the Japanese card market for supporter cards. I think
that's
is
good.
going
because I cut you off. Sorry, that's so
no,
rude.
No problem.
That's what I want to do too. That's why it was a trick question. I know why you're here. I want to talk to you about it as well. But I want to talk to you about it because you're a smart guy. Not just because you run the Poke Guardian website, but also because you've been collecting. You are a collector, first and foremost. You've been doing this for a long time. So you know a little bit. You actually know a lot more. I'd say you know a lot more than I do. We don't like saying the word expert either, but you've got experience, which is a pretty big thing. So disclaimer, we are not experts. Yes. This is not market advice. This is all speculation. Yes. We have no idea what we're talking about. I'm a bozo. He's a bozo.
Yes.
What have you learned from, I guess, before we go too deep into what's happening now, because a lot of people want to know why Japanese Pokemon cards are super, super expensive now, and they are ridiculously expensive. What happened before this? Like, what was the world of Pokemon cards and Japanese Pokemon cards like before this?
Great question, by the way.
Thanks. I asked it myself.
Yeah. But I collected since 2015, 2016. And at the time, I've never paid, I think, more than the $15 for a supporter card, even for black and white.
15, that's insane, because the new paradigm now for like popular supporters, playable or popular characters is like minimum like 150, minimum 150 USD on launch.
It's crazy. And in particular, for example, even in 2017, I remember paying for Skyla from Black and White, Skyla Super Rare, like 15 or 10 euros, convert, something like that. And at the time...
How much is it now?
I don't know. I don't want to know. For the last time I've looked, it was, I think stores wanted to buy it for 80,000 yen.
That's insane. That's the store's buy price. So if you don't know, I've spoken about this a couple of times, but Japanese stores, the way the market works is a little bit different over there. The stores, physical stores, will put out buy lists and say, hey, we want all these cards because they may be popular at the time. They want to sell them. So they'll put out a list that they're buying the cards for. So 80,000 yen is the buy from the store. They're probably going to sell it for what, 850 or 85,000, 90,000 yen. They probably got like a 10, 15% markup on that. That's their profit from the trade, from the deal.
Yeah, I think we've entered a new era, and I think things might have changed for good. To give you a little bit of a background, history on how some of these cards, have risen in price that much. I wanted to give you some history of the first ever modern card that exploded in price, essentially. And it all started with 2017. That year was not necessarily very important, but in that year, it was like a Wild West, not necessarily a Wild West, but an empty desert. You could see that empty, the SpongeBob, animated thing, floating around.
The tumbleweed.
Yes, a tumbleweed. Yes.
Pokemon cards got popular again in 2016, just in general around the world because of Pokemon Go. There's probably like a big hangover of a lack of supply in that period following shortly after.
Yes, we got evolutions during that time. 2017 and 2016 was Sun and Moon, TCG. They were a very slow month compared to what it now is.
Where it's like every 4-6 weeks. Every 4-6 weeks something is coming out. And
very slow weeks, and even the expansion, the subsets were not that great. I remember clearly, SM1 Plus, if you remember or watched Wakeron Collapse.
It's an old school
OG YouTuber.
Yeah, he's basically the OG for Japanese.
Yes. He ranted about SM1 Plus. He saw some difference, some changes he was not clearly happy about. Reprints that were a Milfoil, but they were, just not great. And then you had a chase card, for example, Sylveon GX, and the rest was not great, honestly.
It's pretty sparse. If you go back and look at old, like early Sun Moon sets and their card lists,
not great
compared to what we get now.
Not great.
Like we complain about bloat now because we're just getting suffocated with the rainbow rares for Pokemon and trainers. But back then you didn't have those, or you had rainbow rares, but you you barely had variety in your full arts and your trainer rares. You'd have like 2 and maybe 3 full art trainer supporters, and then you'd have 3 or 4 full arts, and then rainbows, and then maybe 1 or 2 item cards. You're looking at like 13 secret rares. You're only really trying to get 2 max probably from that set out of the chase. So
yes,
it was barren. You had no special arts.
And that's why, for example, from that specific set, Sylveon GX Hyper Rare is very expensive, because
it's the only card.
Yeah, that's actually worth pulling. The other ones were Drampa GX.
There was a shortage though. There was a lack of supply that was probably worse than what we experienced this last 18 months with Japanese Pokemon cards.
Yes, coming back to my story indeed. 2017 SF4 Plus released. Lillie Super Rare was then released. At the time, it was not very expensive, but expensive at the time for a modern card. It was like floating around 8,000 yen at release.
I remember you used to share like Wayback Machine. Yes. You've sent me Wayback Machine screenshots of Japanese cards like Yuyute that have the old buy price.
I have Twitter history as well. You can see, if you filter on 2017, you can advanced search. You will see card shops listing those cards for that price. So again, like I said, different time period. It was like an empty desert. Again, totally different era compared to now.
So that was happening while there was a lack of supply?
No.
While there was a lack of supply,
That came the year after.
No? That came the year after?
Yes.
Okay. So this was a surplus back then?
Yes, it was again slow weeks, slow month, and then 2018 came. 2018 it changed almost everything. It was a turning point in Pokemon card game.
What was the pivotal
moment was then? GX starter deck. Those decks were a surprise hit from Creatures Incorporated. Those decks in particular, were not that special, but they opened a new category for new players to enter. And those decks were, again, on its own, very solid product. You get 1 GX guaranteed, plus a 60 card deck also as well, playable cards, Ultra Balls. Essentially, if you bought 2 or 3 of those decks, you'd get a very consistent deck, but that was not it.
Yeah.
Many celebrities and I think influencers as well were promoting this product. So you can imagine many new players and collectors entered at the time. That contributed to the whole card drought, as you mentioned before. In 2018.
How can a product that features simply staple cards like Ultra Balls and playables, but no rare cards, no special arts, no rainbow rares or full art trainers like we've seen in Start Deck 100, which sounds pretty similar. How can a product like that create a shortage generally for Pokemon cards? Like, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yes, great question. People were entering in that hobby, and they saw, hey, for example, yes, there's a SF4 Plus Lillie. I like that card. And essentially what that did during that summer is in a matter of days, I've seen personally myself seeing Lillie reaching $400, and again, literally a matter of days. And again, like I said before that, it was like $50, $70 that same month.
Yeah, right.
I think people just rediscovering, because like I said with evolutions, I think the same happened with Japanese people over there.
The Japanese set, yes. CP6?
No, not necessarily CP6, but the GX starter decks. For what International did for evolutions, I think GX starter deck did for Japanese people. Then the banger came at the end of the year, GX Ultra Shiny.
That was big. That's Japanese Hidden Fates.
Yes, that was a mayhem. There were people, you can see it on my Twitter moments. I've covered it all. Yeah. There were people waiting from the metro stations all the way, queuing up to Pokemon centers nationwide. I've never seen that before in my life. Even Brace Gaming was there. He was there in Japan.
Yeah.
He vlogged it. He said they closed off sections at the Pokemon Center with, do not enter lines. And then you would get a random lottery. So you'd enter the Pokemon Center. If you were lucky, get a box. And between that whole year, people, were limited at Pokemon Centers to buy 2 products each. It was unprecedented at the time.
The same kind of limitations that we saw get implemented this year for the first time got implemented back then, 2018,
yes,
when Ultra Shiny dropped.
I think that's the roots of, hey, I want that supporter card. And SF4 Plus is an extreme example, because SF4 Plus, again, was a high-class spec set. It wasn't printed anymore. It never got reprinted after GX starter decks came, to my knowledge. From my experience, even friends from Japan said to me, high-class specs, when they are done, they are done. They will never get a reprint again. No, now we know. Tag All-Stars broke that trend, but this is the roots.
After that, then was 2019, and this is where I think probably more recent collectors feel a little bit more familiar with Japanese sets. 2019 was when GX Tag Team All-Stars came out at the end of that year, but it's also when other really popular Sun and Moon sets like Double Blaze, Tag Bolt, basically anything that introduced Tag Team GX cards, because at the same time that introduced special arts.
Yes.
As we know them now. Coming off the back of the absolute insanity that was 2018, how was it in 2019 then?
To be honest, not as 2021. It would, again, do a quite slow month. Again, everyone was excited for special arts, but they were never not unobtainable. I remember, paying, for example, $30 for, was that the Steel Lady again, Yasmin? And I thought that was expensive at the time.
Yeah.
Yasmin for $30, but I really need it, so.
That's kind of weird because with special arts coming out that period and there being like so much hype the year before with Ultra Shiny and Shiny Pokemon coming out, why then when probably arguably the best looking cards ever, when they came out, was there not the same level of hype and hysteria? Even further than that, because we will talk about card prices as they are now. Kind of weird because you would think that, again, they would be very expensive, more expensive than modern cards now. So why?
There was less audience in Japan and outside of Japan. It was, I think, more outside of Japan, more of a niche. I know from 2021, for example, 2020 even, I've been told Yu-Gi-Oh! Collectors entered Pokemon cards in Japan. After 2019, Shiny Star V happened. Then, people outside of Japan and Asia were entering Japanese cards.
Yeah, 2020 onwards is when we had like a lot of international interest in Japanese Pokemon cards.
So there was less audience focusing on buying Japanese cards in general. So you had to make do with the local Japanese, domestic Japanese collectors mainly. And like I said, those collectors were used paying over $100 for modern card at the time. Like I said, was absolutely crazy. And then as a 4+ Lady was the exception of that. The same happened with special arts. They were just there. The supply was there. Everyone could buy a box for, again, I'm not naming card shops, but even those card shops today that are reselling, double MSRP boxes, were selling it for essentially MSRP. So everyone could just buy a box and, oh, hey, if I pull a special art, nice. If I don't pull a special art, I'll just buy it for under $80 or something like that.
They were never like historically day one expensive. The way that modern sets, like the easy examples, Eevee Heroes, Blue Sky Stream with the Rayquaza, Lost Origin or Lost Abyss, in Japan with the Giratina, day one minimum for the chase card, the special art has been, 30,000 yen. So about, 200 to 300 USD as the entry point.
And I think they were not as difficult to pull as today. I think they are.
Really? Because
I don't recall. I haven't opened as many boxes as I do today because why I'm saying this, there was, for me, not really much effort in buying booster boxes because I always singled it out for, again, like I said, for normal prices. What today is normal, 3 years ago was normal as well. So I had no incentive to essentially buy 5 boxes.
When you could just buy 5 singles that you want and be done with it. Now that's basically like impossible.
That's the whole thing. And that's why this discussion is so important. And the question arises, who's benefiting from this?
I wouldn't say the hardest to pull thing, that's a good topic to bring up, but something I probably disagree with because I don't think historically, I know in sports cards, there's a term SSP. I think it stands for super short print. So it basically means that particular card has been printed purposefully less than others. But I don't think Pokemon cards have SSP cards, like cards that it's not like marked or anything. It wouldn't be marked. It would be like an unofficial, this is an SSP card because it's significantly harder to pull than the rest of them. So an example of one in like a recent card set is for Digimon. I know in the Japanese Digimon set, there's one set called BT06 where there's like a white, I'm pretty sure it's Omnimon, that is noted and recognized by many collectors as an SSP card. I think it's like one in every 20 cases or something insane, right?
That's crazy.
Yeah, and the price is reflective of that because I think day one, the price of that in Japan was something about 6,000 yen, 6,000 USD, 6,000 USD, 4 digits. I know it's come down since then, but that is a SSP card. I don't think Pokemon doesn't really have that. The sets have cards that are like more popular, it's like significantly more popular, more sought after than others. And I think collectors, players, and card stores recognize that. And so they inherently become the more expensive card. How can it become more expensive until it gets sold? Who's deciding what the price is?
This is just a theory for me. Yes.
Yeah.
I have no facts. I'm just speculating this. I think the card shops are losing money on opening mass booster boxes. If they know they already have a chase card, because everyone knows what the chase card is, why not decide, hey, let's just make this one card 20,000 yen. Let's just do that and see if people pay for that card. And if they do, it's all great. If they don't, they will just decrease the price. Like I said, we have entered a new era. In 2020 and 2021, like I said, many new people with, again, different hobbies have entered this whole market. They have a lot of money to spend.
Yeah.
And looking at other card games in Japan, Hawaii Swatch, what more, some of those HoloLive cards, there are cards that are way higher priced than Pokemon. So Japanese are very dedicated to certain characters, in this case Pokemon, or characters from Pokemon.
So which kind of characters?
Not the ones they like.
Which ones?
I the ones they really like. So for example, I like
Umbreon.
Like Umbreon is one, but there's more a general well liked.
Like Sylveon?
I don't know. So I've seen there are many Japanese collectors, for example, yes, this way back from 2017, there was a collector in Japan that was, that person was, I think he had the whole room full of Alolan Golem GX. He was just collecting thousands at this point for like $1-2. Japanese collectors are really dedicated. You've seen some examples as well. Even I am just a light version of a Japanese collector in that sense. For example, my friend has Resistance. He has over, I think, 20,000 Lugias collected today.
That's a lot. That's so many.
That's what I'm saying. It's not about, some people like a certain character or Pokemon.
That's so impressive though, because like to be so consistent with your collection, like to have zero distraction. That's like a very impressive collection from SO Resistance. And I believe it was shared publicly. I believe they shared, I recall seeing like an image where they had like framed all of their very rare Lugia.
Yes.
And they were showcasing that at a stall, because it becomes a historical piece. Like this is what's the word? Not biography, but it's almost like a discography of cards.
Yes.
There's a word for it. I can't remember what it is, but it becomes historical at that point. It's so impressive to have that much dedication.
I agree with you. And also I need to add, hey, many collectors are seeing these cards now as a luxury object.
Yeah.
So those collectors I just mentioned, they're one of many. Buying an expensive card is more accepted there with the whole culture in Japan than here. So they will not hesitate spending $300 for a card they really like.
Whereas here, we'll be apprehensive about, as Japanese card collectors, we'll be apprehensive about dipping our toes in that playing field. Over there, it's the normal, it's the standard. And the cards sell. They sell. Whereas we'll be like hesitant watching day 0, day 1, day 2 prices, because we're familiar with the English variants of these rare cards, like, the Giratina Special Art being cheaper significantly on day 1 compared to the Japanese version. I think there's like a $300 or $200 price gap between the Japanese and the English version, the Japanese version being more expensive. The markets have parallels, but they're different.
They have so much devotion for something, and you can see it all through Japan, the work, and you will see that in their hobbies as well. So in that sense, we are a totally different market with totally different desires. I think personally the shops are participating in this, and again, why not if it sells?
It's a powerful word, but it almost feels like they are exploiting the circumstances.
Yeah, I think it's a heavy word, exploiting, but they might take advantage of it, and why not? Again,
it's working. And it is a business at the end of the day.
It's a business. So they need to make money. And like I said, they might be losing out on opening booster boxes for singles. And this all started with 2021. Rep Strike and Single Strike Master released. I saw for the first time a supporter card. Corina, I'm not sure what.
Corina's Focus.
Corina's Focus. I think it was like a 15 or 18,000 yen card.
They set the bar high. I remember back then. They were just like,
this was new. This was new for me and for everyone. I think, hey.
Yeah.
what is happening? Special arts were returning, so there was some hype, and Pokemon Anniversary started just literally around the corner. Yeah, it was the first time I saw a difference, and I think I remember 2 days later, it was 8,000 yen, and I saw, hey, everyone is just waiting it out. Maybe
it's a good point to bring up and a good moment in 2021, and I think that sounds like then almost it was like a test.
Yes.
It's a test for what they do now based on what happened with the Marnie full art from Shiny Star V. Yes. So that is like, Marnie's like it's a staple card. It's ultra playable, but it's also one of the most popular characters from Sword and Shield. Her full art from Shiny Star V, it wasn't like that expensive at the time, and it wasn't the chase, but it shortly after, once the first wave of Shiny Star V dried up, became the card that a lot of people wanted. So maybe it feels like they saw that and were like, okay, well, Coroner's the next waifu card. Waifu. We're going to use the term waifu.
Yeah.
Now, people get funny about it because the characters are all different ages. It's just a general blanket term. Waifu doesn't mean anything more than that. That was the next waifu card that sort of came out. They're almost like they set the bar up high to see what would happen. And it didn't work. Yeah, like you said, everyone just waited it out.
Didn't work.
And wasn't that good of a card, Coroner.
Then we had Jet Black Poltergeist and Silver Lance.
Caitlyn.
Indeed. Yeah. That was even higher. At the launch.
And then it came down. It was super cheap, like just until this latest surge. But yeah, it came down too.
And mind you, those two were the last ever sets that you could, walk into at Amazon Japan, for example, and just casually pre-order it without any issues. And then, Eevee Heroes struck. And I think that was the turning point for what is today.
Eevee Heroes was the catalyst for everything that's happened since. Yeah, it was berserk. No words. When people say Eevee Heroes to like long-time Japanese collectors or anyone who's been collecting since 2020, we'll just use that term in this modern era. It sends a shiver down your spine.
Yeah, especially I've never seen something like that before.
Like I distinctly remember the periods of time around that set, from reveal to the initial pre-order attempts to the lottery. Like I remember where I was, remember what I was doing, because it was so traumatic. It sounds so dramatic because it's just Pokemon cards, but it was ridiculous. It broke the Pokemon Center website.
Yes,
basically
they got to apologize twice,
and they don't often apologize.
No,
do they?
Not always. I do. I remember when they apologized for GX Ultra Shiny. They apologized because that year again, like I said, 2018 stock shortage, and again, it was a one timer. But Eevee Heroes made them apologize twice. That was so crazy, and I've seen that before.
When Eevee Heroes was first accessible for international and national collectors, it was first come, first serve on the Pokemon Center website. Yes. Items were released on the website at about 10 a.m. Japan Standard Time. That is just a known time when items will get listed up there. So a lot of us were waiting, sitting there, just getting ready to try and check out with this thing. And you just couldn't. Like, it was impossible. There's about 4 steps you need to go through to get confirmation of your order. People were getting logged out. People were getting hit with captures. People were just looping endlessly on the final stage, like to get payment to go through. It just wasn't happening. I know there were a few people, I can probably count on like one hand, the people I know that got a booster box, the VMAX special set, or the Eevee Heroes gym box. But that was insanity. I'd say like 95% of people missed out that were trying to get it.
Yeah, again, like I said, Shiny Star V, many new people outside from Asia were getting familiar with Japanese cards. Literally a new world opened for them, and and then what you then essentially get is, hey, a lot of people, even mainstream people, like I said, they with their assets, they got sneaker bots. They applied them to. I've seen it firsthand. Some even with the mills, 100 mills.
Yeah.
Botting those Pokemon centers in Japan was behind.
It did. It got botted. We saw the tweets. Yes. We saw the tweets. Yeah, they weren't ready for bots.
Outdated.
We saw botting accounts and botting Twitter accounts just basically say, "Hey, check out the dubs our app got," and that was like traumatic. That was like insult to injury because we essentially lost the bots, which sucks. Whether it's video games, sneakers, or clothes, apparel, or whatever. Even after that, then it was still really difficult to get. They then did a lottery system for a wave that was going to come out a month after release. So if you're an international collector, you just don't win lotteries anymore. Which we've tried to work out like how the lottery system works, and some have speculated that there's a certain amount of people from a prefecture that can win in Japan. So in Japan, prefectures are kind of like states. It's kind of difficult. They're kind of like states, but they're just districts or areas. They're not districts, but they're anyway, a certain amount of people from a prefecture can win, only a certain amount. So they try to spread it out across the country, which is probably a good way to do it. But it means that if you're using a parcel forwarding service, that you're almost never going to win because parcel forwarding services are in the one spot. And if everybody who's using a parcel forwarder is trying to get it, then they technically count as another address from that area. So international collectors very rarely win lotteries. And Eevee Heroes was the first time that became like overly apparent.
What is funny is because before that, with Jet Black, Poltergeist, Sylveon, they did the Pokemon Center box. That's the first time they did the lottery. And that first lottery, I won that lottery. And after that...
That was the last lottery I won too.
I've never won a single lottery ever again. And I don't know, is this some sort of discrimination? Because I do include my forwarder server's name in there. In the address.
I don't think it's discrimination. I think it's their attempt to weed out international collectors because at the end of the day,
it's not meant for us.
Like,
let's be honest.
Yeah, it's not meant for us. It's their attempt to just ensure that national players and collectors can get
domestic product.
It's understandable, but it is frustrating at the same time. Like it can be both things. After Eevee Heroes, then that was the new paradigm. So at the start of the year, we saw cards like Caitlyn, Coroner's Focus, and Cheryl become really expensive day one. And the special arts from those sets, because Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX was very playable at the time.
Also very expensive.
As well.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a very expensive special art. Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX and Single Strike Urshifu VMAX were the two first special arts for this Sword Shield block. And it just happened that the Rapid Strike version was like ultra playable. And Japanese bling decks are a big thing over there.
And the blue one, the Rapid Strike one, was, in my opinion, more exciting to see.
Yeah, that was incredible. Yeah.
The Single Strike one looked like a VMAX.
A lot of people say that, but it is drawn by like...
Yes, and...
I know. It's sometimes you got to look a bit deeper. I hate it when people are like, it looks like a VMAX. Because
it does from when you zoom it out, it looks like a regular VMAX.
It's the style though. Like if you're familiar with the style, it's by Kinu Nishimura. So she's a long-time Capcom design artist. If you were ever playing like Street Fighter Alpha, anything from that period in the mid-90s, Sega Saturn, moving onwards, it distinctly looks like something from a Street Fighter game. So for that reason, I like it a lot. I know people are like, it looks like a VMAX, but this was interesting for two reasons. Not because they just look so good, but because these two artists had never done Pokemon card illustrations before, and they came from two different spheres of art, I guess. Nishimura came from the gaming side, Kyutaka Oshiyama is an anime director. They're two different styles that were now coming into Pokemon. And I guess maybe this is a discussion for another day. It's a discussion on how creatures have expanded their the artists that they commission, and they're trying to get many different artists from many different fields involved. But yeah, basically these special arts kicked everything off. I think Jet Black Poltergeist had the Shadow Rider Calyrex and the Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX, which weren't that popular at the time, and they were relatively affordable for a long period. And like every other Japanese Pokemon card, they are just really difficult to get. Now, I think last I looked, it was like 60,000 yen. So you're looking at 500 to 600 USD, which is insane. Insane. But after Eevee Heroes, we had Blue Sky Stream and Skyscraping Perfect, and Blue Sky Stream has never reprinted. That's got the Rayquaza VMAX from that you've seen in Evolving Skies by Anasaka Dynamic, and that's like, if I look it up now, 7R for that.
I remember Rayquaza also, similar to Umbreon VMAX special art, 80,000 yen.
Oh, well, that was day one. Yeah, and you are right. That was day one. Yeah. This card was... and that was when the US to yen conversion wasn't that great. So you were looking at, 700, 800 USD day one. This one didn't come down either because I've been looking. It's a card I want in my collection, but I cannot justify. I can't, but now I can in this new era. Yeah. It's like, well, that's how it is. So what it is. But back then when this came out, that was the new precedent because not even Umbreon VMAX was expensive as that.
Yes.
Day one.
Correct.
And it only went up.
I think people realized then, hey, I have now more security to buy this 80,000 yen card because all the other cards are not going down. I think that's the whole topic of 2021. People were more confident in buying cards in general at higher prices.
Yeah.
Like I said, with the luxury objects, hey, now I'm confident enough to splash that $500 on that single card.
Knowing that it's not going to go down with some semblance of confidence. Yes. Yeah, okay.
I think that's also a major difference between 2017, 18, 19. Back then, you would buy Shinings, Gold Stars at that kind of prices, because they proved themselves. They were never coming back. in its original form. Again, they were very hard to pull.
It's funny that you bring up gold stars and cards like that are now like, I think you can call a gold star vintage now. It's definitely not modern.
No,
it's not.
Totally different era.
It doesn't need to be from the 90s to be vintage. This is from mid 2000s. So this is quite wild because you can find these gold stars not in mint condition, but in relatively good condition for about the same price that you will find a modern special art.
Yes,
that's only a year or two old.
Yes.
It's berserk because this modern special art could potentially get reprinted. You don't know at any point.
Today.
But the Jolteon is not coming back.
Never.
Why? Like, how can it?
That's the question. I've been asking myself for the last 6 months because that Jolteon is way shorter print.
Yeah.
2006 was nowhere as big as 2021. How is this possible?
I know, like, an argument some people would say is character popularity, so the Pokemon popularity, but I'd argue that Jolteon is more popular than Rayquaza. Like, Rayquaza's great, but Jolteon is a much more known Pokemon. It's neither here or there. Like, the fact that this Jolteon is in significantly less supply than the Rayquaza but still around about the same price is illogical. It's irrational.
Comes all down to the Japanese market, I think. And like I said, when the card shops are, raising the price, they will play into their hands, essentially. I think that's just how it is.
Yeah.
And I'm not blaming anyone. Or saying anyone, go to a witch hunt.
I know some people want to.
Yeah, they want to.
And I'd say, I'd say there's almost like valid reason to, because it does feel like it's sometimes.
Yes, it does feel.
Some cards are being pumped.
It might be, but it's working.
Well, I guess people are buying at these pumped prices.
The card shops are buying them for those prices. They are confident enough to take that risk.
This is the thing, and it's a great point that you bring up. The card shops are buying it at the prices. Where it's a little bit different to how we look at market price in the West, where it's like you just go look at eBay sold. It's hard to know if a card is selling or if a sale has actually gone through and if that is now the new price. It's a little bit different in Japan because these stores are committing not just to 1 or 2 or 3 cards, to like 30, 40, 50 odd sought after modern cards. They are committing to buying. So they're actively saying, come to our store, we will give you this much money for this card. They're going into essentially debt in that moment, neither here nor there. But then they're able to sell it. They wouldn't be doing that unless they were able to sell it. So there is justification. Somewhere here, these sales are happening. Unless it's, and then put your tinfoil hat on, it's some massive conspiracy where the card stores are rolling on they're banking on the chance of selling these cards for this crazy price, which would be a horrendous business decision because they would be buying, $50, $60, $70, $80,000 worth of cards and then just sitting on the stock hoping that they sell. They are selling.
It is, again, the drama, the controversy they get on social media. They are gaining attention. They are winning, essentially, because, hey, when I buy that Marnie card now today for $2,000, it will be spread right on Japanese social media or even worldwide.
Twitter, yeah. Line and Twitter, it gets spread.
Wildfire. They will have attention. People will sell that card to that stores. Who wins? I think the card shop wins, essentially, and the customer is happy as well. So who is benefiting? Everyone.
I think the card shops win as well for multiple reasons, not just because they get the sale, but because it establishes, again, it cements, sorry, I should say, rather, the paradigm there, the expectation. Yeah. It's almost like if you collect Japanese cards, you've been beaten into submission with this. Like, if you choose to keep collecting Pokemon cards, Japanese Pokemon cards, at this point, you have just accepted that it is an expensive hobby. If you're still here, if you're still holding on to the monkey bar, you're well and truly a part of the issue because you're facilitating it by continuing to buy from the stores. And I think the stores pulling off these huge sales of massive expensive cards cements that and says, well, look, if it's just happening. It be like that sometimes. And if I want that next Lugia V Altar when it drops in a week, I have to just suck it up and buy it.
Yes. Fear of missing out is hitting.
I'd say it's not even FOMO anymore. It's just like acceptance of missing out. It's
also
different.
Yeah, you might be correct. Yes.
I'm not scared of missing out. I'm pissed that I might have to pay more. And I know I'm going to have to pay more.
And it's crazy because, again, like I said, they are full in print. There are no shortages from what I see this whole year. There's plenty of stock this whole year of 2022. I've never struggled to buy a set released this year. Not one.
Yeah.
Even now, Paradigm Trigger.
Yeah.
But I think, when it releases after a month, you will see it, seeing for 6,000-7,000 yen.
I disagree with you. I think there's no turning back from where we are now. And that set has the Lugia V Alt in it. I think that, it's the perfect combination where it's like a really nice looking card, A lot of collectors are going to want it, and it's a very playable card. It's probably going to become a meta deck. Here I am making it worse. I'm making the whole situation. I'm pumping it.
Yes.
But it's genuinely what I think. Yeah. Like, I mean, even look at the last set, Incandescent Arcana, which honestly wasn't that great across the board. That set was made, that's what we call a sealed format set, where it's made, it's almost like a build and battle box. Let's just really simplify. It's like how you have build and battle box tournaments. In Japan, you have sealed format. I'm loose with the terminology, but basically, you go there, you open a box, and whatever cards you get from that box are what you need to use to build a deck. And if you win, you get a really rare Lucario, full art or hyper rare, which is like, again, like $5 or $6 That's like a massive promo card. But the point is, that was a set that was designed to be put in players' hands. And even that's still like, it's like 7, 8, 9 grand if you want to, 9,000 yen if you want to get it now. I know it's a difficult set to get in Japan. Probably propped up by a Serena, which is ultra playable card.
Serena was, I anticipated that card was going to be very expensive because Serena is very popular within the Pokemon anime.
Yeah.
I already was anticipating, that card is going to steal the show, and it did as expected. I think this is the best example, Serena.
Yeah.
It launched at 50,000 yen on day one. Then up until 3 weeks ago, it was 25,000 yen.
Yeah.
And now it went back to 50, and now it's even rising to 60,000 yen. Is it natural for a card, a modern card that is still in print today, to rise 100% in price
and fluctuate so rapidly within such a short period of time?
Like I am scared of it. Honestly, when I buy a card, I want to keep it as much as possible for my own personal reasons.
Yeah.
If you are a speculator, I think you are not sleeping well, honestly.
Yeah.
From here on out, I anticipate that Serena card will exceed the 100,000 yen. I don't think it will go back to 25,000 yen.
No, not a chance. Not a chance in hell. No.
That's too much.
I agree with you. Yeah, I agree.
It makes you think because what is going on. That's the whole topic of this video. Yeah. What is going on?
Yeah.
I have no answers.
And I don't either. So like maybe we just put this at the start because I do not have the answers either. And I get asked all the time. And I've made multiple price discussion videos on this channel, not to tell you the source of what's happening or the reasons, but to make you aware of what is occurring. And then the whole point in this video today is just to have a discussion and talk about, to vocalize it, to try and rationalize it, because it is irrational. You said before, what's happening is unnatural. I think what's happening is just flat out stupid. Like it's at the point of insanity.
Yes. And
like, again, like to reiterate, like 50,000 yen on launch for Serena is, in my opinion, stores trying to see how much they can get.
Of course.
And then it's slowly coming down is the reality of what the market is willing to pay. And then it reaches this threshold where it's like, okay, back up we go now. It's almost like you're getting waterboarded. It's like if you bought the dip, then you get rewarded. They're making an example with Serena. Like, this is what we'll do, but just be prepared for it to then ricochet back up and then propel. And there's no going back from there. Exactly. Serena's super playable as well as like popular. So for the next 2-3 years, this will be an expensive card, but it is. It's like they're saying this is what's happening. So get used to it.
A nice one example is Gengar VMAX Special Art. I've seen it lately. Yeah. That card was, from what I've seen at launch, I think 8,000 yen.
It was 8,000 yen. 8,000 I can tell you definitively. Yeah.
And now it's risen to 30,000 yen, something like that, average.
This should be more expensive, and I'm not trying to pump it, but based on what we've discussed, following the logic and the rationale of what we've discussed today, this should be more expensive than 90% of cards right now. Yes. Of modern cards that are expensive right now.
But somehow it isn't. To give you background why Julian is saying this, you need to essentially open a 3,500 yen blinked out deck product.
Yeah.
To get a chance, you're not guaranteed a chance of getting that VMAX Special Art. You're not guaranteed anything. So if you buy 10, you essentially spend 30,000 yen on the deck.
Yeah.
So how is that different from Incandescent Arcana? You have literally nothing if you open a deck.
Yeah.
With Incandescent Arcana, you get something at least.
At the least, you will get the character rares and one SR. Yes. I think it's either 1 in 6 or 1 in 12 from a case. I think a case had 6 boxes in it. Yeah, which is good odds. And you can farm them. So like if you were a store, you could farm the product. But if you farm the product, then you rob your customers of the opportunity to buy it. It's a slippery slope. It's not something I think a store would really do. But even if you could farm it, that product wasn't around for a long time. They only printed, I think, 2 waves of that. And the waves were probably separated by about 2 or 3 months.
Yes.
Now it's gone. So in theory, this card should be really expensive now that it's gone. considering it's a totally random chance whether you get it buying it as a customer.
I think it's crazy.
But it's 35,000 yen.
I think, in my opinion, considering VMAX Gengar is a very popular Pokemon, it should be as expensive, in my opinion, as Rayquaza, Umbreon, Giratina Special even. I don't know why is 30,000 yen. Again, I'm not saying as a as a legal investment advice buy that card. No, but I think it's outrageous how that card is 30,000 yen. A Marnie from Sword and Shield base set is now reaching 200,000 yen, for example.
Let's circle back to Marnie in a minute because there's a reason why. So I want to bookmark cards like Marnie and Lisia for a moment. On this trend of cards like Gengar that are are limited in print and aren't coming back. I think a recent one is the 25th anniversary collection promos, the ones that you would find from those packs. It was like you'd get 4 packs if you bought a booster box. That's a little bit peculiar, I will say. The Charizard, I think, is a real good example of market control, the Charizard promo from this set, because I'm going to say almost like authoritatively on this one that there was no SSP. There was no finite amount of print of one particular card from these promos. It was maybe there was 1 million of each one printed. Yeah. So Charizard, the same amount as Here Comes Team Rocket. This card is now 30,000 plus yen. That's quite high when you look at the second next most expensive card, which is Blastoise, which is not as popular, but just in the same discussion, it's like 5,000 yen. And if you go and have a look at CP6, which is the Japanese version of Evolutions, which came out in 2016, also has a Charizard card in it, same one, reprinted. That's actually worth less.
I think it's crazy.
Than this one.
I'm not sure anymore. Yeah,
it is. I looked yesterday. I looked yesterday.
I'm not talking about the difference between prices, but I think the Charizard with a CP6 box, I think it may be guaranteed. You would get, I think, one of each holo in one of those boxes. I can't remember anymore. I remember, but I get your point.
But the box is 3,000 USD. Yes. So if you even want to have an attempt now,
it's an expensive experience. Yes.
Having said that, and that is a good point. There was a lot of this. There was a lot of CP6 at the time. I know that back then, and I've seen people who have shared screenshots of their purchases for CP6. That was back when you could just
bulk
drop an order at Army. Yeah, get a case at retail.
I got a PSA 10 CP6 Charizard from a very good friend for free from a giveaway. Yeah, that's just how much there was out there. It's just Charizard. They want to compare it.
It's the Charizard effect.
CP6. Hey, this card is 30,000 yen. This card should be 40,000 yen. I think that's how they are going to. They are anticipating is never coming back. This promo pack. So why not raise it? Because you will never get it again from a pack.
The last chance to get it was just recently, August, September. But you had to put your order in for that opportunity back in, I think, January of the start of this year.
Even earlier.
Which was made to order. So you again, this is why we're just trying to rationalize it. These were made to order. So it wasn't like there was a pre-order window and that was the end of it. If it was first in, first served. This was open for a week. So they printed this to demand. Yes. So how can there be lack of supply already? Which is why I think this is an example of manipulation and control. It doesn't make sense. If it was printed to meet demand, there is a lot of these out there.
Yes.
And they've released at multiple periods in time. When it launched in October, November of last year, I know there was a second wave shortly after that in December. And then again, this third print to demand wave. What's going on?
I am not seeing... Personally, I'm not seeing a lot of Japanese collectors rushing out to pay 30,000 yen for that Charizard. In my view, if you see a lot of people from Japan buying those cards for 30,000 yen, please show me, because who's buying that?
That's a good point.
It's been a year now. Everyone could have bought that Charizard for 8,000 yen.
That's true. Yep.
And this is why I think who's buying this? Speculators. When I want a card personally, again, like with many sets, I buy it as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Same with Umbreon from that same promo pack set.
Yeah.
Why does someone want to pay 30,000 yen for that Charizard right now in mass quantities?
That's a good point that you raised there about who's buying it.
Yes.
Because there are examples of cards like this where, I'd agree with you. I'd say Japanese collectors aren't buying this card. Then there's an example though of other cards where it's like, yes, where they are clearly, we can point to events or circumstances and say, it's clearly being bought. I'm going to get to this Marnie and the Lisia, which are super expensive cards, shortly. But to lead into that, an example of this is what is happening and we can see it is when those collectors, all those card stores are actively purchasing cards across. They're accumulating, right? There was a period, I think it was last year, maybe sometime in August, September, October, somewhere between that bracket, where a card store was opening up in Akihabara. It's called Haruruya 2. So Haruruya was traditionally known as like a Magic the Gathering store for players and collectors, but they decided to open up a Pokemon branch, logical because it's so popular, in Akihabara. So when Haruruya 2 was opening or leading up to it, we started to see a big surge in card prices. And I made videos at the time. You can go back. A lot of why the prices were surging at that point are attributed to Haruruya opening up and Haruruya trying to accumulate as much stock as they can to put physically in their store before the store launched. So that created this almost like artificial demand. It wasn't real, but I guess the stores and the people that were accumulating those cards were real. Maybe 10% of the purchases that occurred during that time were people riding the wave. The wave that was being created by Haruruya.
I remember card shops and even collectors indeed were being affected, even if they didn't want to. They were affected by that huge name indeed entering the market.
Yeah,
because I think they were already quite a big chain there in Japan.
Yeah, they're a big chain. Yes. Yeah, and a lot of YouTubers, Japanese YouTubers, then also were riding that wave. So there was so much social media presence. I can go and point to so many different YouTubers at that time. It was an event. You know, when the store opened up, they were all the YouTubers were there. I think the day or two before, the YouTubers were invited to go through the store to pump and excite people even further. So Haruruya is like an established store now because of that. But in that little period, it created this massive surge in price, which we don't really see that here in the West. Like it doesn't happen like that.
Different culture.
Yeah, and also I think because the market's smaller, it's easier to manipulate, but it's not so much manipulation. It's easier to impact it, but because it's easier to impact it, it is easier to manipulate it. Yeah, it's unique, the Japanese market. But that was one point, and they all retraced. All the prices came down after that, not like rock bottom, but they retraced to something a little bit more rational. Until this next period we're in here, where it's just the last 2 months has continued to climb. And like basically everything is climbing. The Marnie, which we were talking about before, 1,500, 2,000 USD. Depending on where you look, you can find these cards cheaper than this. This is just, we just use these prices as like
reference points.
Yeah, reference, a ballpark. But depending on where you look, you can look on Card Market. I know you have. And you found the Marnie for a pretty good price recently. The way that card has rocketed in price over the last 2 months to where it is now.
Yes, 80,000 yen. The market price in Japan, September 11. So they were listing it for 80,000 yen, and then card shops were buying it on September 20 for 100,000 yen. Oh, sorry, 110,000 yen, and then 5 days later it was listed for 148,000 yen. Then October 8, it was being bought by one shop for 200,000 yen.
And I trust you because I've seen this myself. We don't have the screens. I think maybe you might.
1 month.
But that is what happened. Like if you're watching this in a year or 2 or 3 from now, like Primal's not going to lie about that. I'm not going to lie about that. I have no reason to. I don't even own the card. Why would I lie about pumping it? I don't own it. I want it. So it's what happened.
I think it's crazy.
And it's not just that card though. Like it's other similar cards. Yes. It's the waifu cards. Like Lisia is another example. The Lisia full art from Charisma the Cracked Sky. I think it's from, what's the English set that it's from?
Celestial Storm.
Celestial Storm, that's right. It's a set that's got the Rayquaza in it, the Japanese one. I think it's at 400,000 yen or 350,000 yen in that bracket now. There's a stream when Worlds was on, so the late August, I was streaming Worlds together with a friend, Joe. During one of the breaks, we were like, oh, let's have a look at some card prices. We went on this website, Card Rush, and we saw Lisia was 100,000 yen. And I remember us going like, what? Like, when the heck did that happen? Like, that's so sudden. Like, I knew it was expensive for a long period, but that was a lot.
I remember that period because they were essentially not phasing out Sun and Moon, but it was not going to reprint anymore in 2020.
No.
And in 2019, at the end of 2019, you could still get them. Beginning of 2020, you could also still get them at Amazon Japan, for example. Again, different time. 2020 was also, I think, not an empty desert, but again, a really slow month when they were all out of print. Within 1 day, I saw a 30-40% increase of those boxes. For example, that Lost Thunder set from Japan, I think is Super Burst Impact or something like that. I wanted to buy some before that, but I think, hey, I just leave it alone. Suddenly became like 10,000 yen within 1-2 days. I think that was crazy.
And they're not even good. They're not even good sets. Like, no, I'm sorry, but as a collector, I can say like they're not even that interesting.
No,
the Super Burst Impact or Explosive Impact. Basically, the one that's got Lugia on the front. It's just got Whitney and the full art Lugia GX, which I know you have a lot of, and a lot of people do because it wasn't that popular of a card. But now now it's like, oh, the box is expensive, so the cards are expensive. But yeah, like you said, I remember when I bought my last few boxes of Charisma of the Cracked Sky for 5,000 yen. I bought like 4, and I was like, yeah, I'll try and find Lisia. And I think after the second box, I found it. So now as a byproduct, not only do I have the Lisia, which is 350,000 to 400,000 yen, I've also got the 2 Cracked Sky boxes that are just sitting there sealed. Why would I open them? Like, why? Yeah, it would be stupid.
Correct.
That's happened now as well. Now, I think why these all of a sudden have surged again, this is all speculation, but I think there was a little bit of discussion in Japan about PSA Japan's office closing submissions for the year.
That also happened
on the 7th of October. Yeah. So I think when that got announced, and this was alerted to me by a friend, Lolviet, when this got announced or became apparent, then a lot of collectors started putting in their last submissions for the year because, they weren't going to get another chance. PSA 10 cards there's a market over there in Japan for PSA cards.
Japanese culture, they want perfection.
Not only that, but they also sell them internationally. So if you ever look on eBay, you'll see PSA 10 cards being sold from Japan because they know the collectors out there want them. They're really stubborn about negotiating, just quietly. But yeah, there was this surge then to submit your cards before the 7th of October. There's speculation that because of that, then people were buying up the last remaining popular cards, like your Marnie, like your Lisia, to then go and submit them in this deadline. So that caused this sudden recent surge, right? So if you've been watching this whole video to this point, you get rewarded with the nugget of information that is that. That caused this recent surge. You would think that after the deadline that this would stop and that we would see the retrace, but it hasn't. It's escalated past those peaks. So cards like Marnie and Lisia, I think have gone up in price because of that. But as we've just discussed for the last hour or so, like once a new milestone or benchmark gets set, it rarely comes back from there.
Yeah, I agree with that. The price won't go down. And also you brought up the PSA stuff. Indeed, I think that also plays a huge factor in Japanese people are more concerned of condition today as they were 4 years ago, because 4 years ago condition was not the leading factor when buying cards within Japan. I clearly remember a lot of collectors from Japan didn't know about top loaders. Can you imagine? Now today PSA 10 is a well used term today. Nermint also it's getting a very popular term now today in Japan. So also, again, I think, like I said, they were ignorant, not necessarily ignorant, but they were more ignorant about condition than today. And I think that also plays a factor. And if you get a PSA 10, like I said, Japanese people might be more, hey, this is perfection. I want to pay more for that.
So the pool of quality, well-conditioned cards is just significantly less.
Yes.
Because, that's why, like, you'll often see, if you ever browse card stores, you'll see that like you can find state A, B, C cards. The C cards are usually like scuffed, like ultra scuffed, because play is big over there in Japan. And we've said throughout the video that bling cards or like max rarity decks are a popular thing there. So a lot of these really expensive cards have just been played like thoroughly. And Lily was an example of that, which probably also factors into why it's so expensive. It's harder to find good quality conditioned Lilies now. But yeah, that is a massive point, that the supply of good condition cards is so small over there. The current meta for collecting is that modern is king in Japan.
And sealed.
Modern gets laughed at around the world.
Yes.
But in Japan it's king. But even having said all of this, make it out like it's over, or like it's not accessible anymore, the market, because of this. This is only really occurring with modern. We only spoke about one real vintage card, which was the Gold Star Jolteon. But you could do that for so many different vintage promo cards, short print cards, or just cards from sets that are old, that are rare, that are worth about the same or less than hyped popular modern cards. So modern is well and truly king in Japan, but there's still pockets, there's still areas of Japanese cards like types, Pokemon, etc., that you can still get into that haven't actually been impacted by this surge.
I think a lot of old cards have risen in price, for at least the popular ones. Umbreon cards, let's face it, in a couple of 2 years they have risen 1,000%.
Yeah.
I think that's even if it's coming 200%, it won't go back to the original price. I think if you are collecting long enough, yes, in this hobby, if you are engaging also actively in the hobby, you will find all sorts of cards in your life. I did, for example.
Yeah.
I've got the most crazy cards from random events at work, at Pokemon League, you name them, online, via friends, Twitter. You just need to enjoy the hobby. I personally am not as concerned as everyone. Some maybe, if you just enjoy it and make those friends, you will be surprised how many people, if you are struggling with your collection, will try to help you out. And I think that's the most important lesson to take from this video as well. Have fun first, then all the other things will come later. I think this is the most important lesson in this video. The question then arises to myself and to you as well. If you would start again with this current prices, would you pay those prices today for all those,
me personally,
for all those cards?
Me personally, no. My collection would be very streamlined. If I was to start from scratch today, I would be very focused on certain Pokemon and probably certain artists, and I'd leave it at that. It's definitely a hobby that once you're in it, it's easier to justify the high price tags. But if you're just getting into it, it's very difficult to. It's not accessible as a collector. I would not have the same collection now if I started again. I'm fortunate in that I've found good cards over the years. I've found good purchases, made good trades. Sold good cards and then used that money to buy other cards that I've wanted. Yes. But I definitely would not have the same collection, It's bizarre. I don't like to talk about it too much. I don't like to, because it feels like a flex. If you and I were to sit here and talk about our collection for an hour, like it would feel almost just so self-serving. We just would be patting ourselves on the back. Because the reality is, if you've been collecting Japanese cards at least since 2020, somewhat actively, you would have a pretty valuable collection by now. Oh,
I'm not talking about other eras, black and white in 2017, 2016. All those shining black and white cards, they were like bottom price. I'm not sure why and how and when, but I got that shiny Gardevoir from the Japanese Dark Explorer set for like 10 or 15 euros converted, and I don't want to look it up today. I again, same with the whole what I said in the beginning, the Skyla full art from black and white. No, they were just there. I just liked them for what they are. Never thought any second, hey, this will be a multi, 6-digit yen card. But some of them are today. Today, what we are seeing might in 5 years, we might be laughing about that Lillie full art from SF4 Plus. We don't know how far to go. I think we truly entered a new era. You have to learn from the past. You have to make decisions today. But first and foremost, you have to enjoy the card.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. Yeah. That's the main takeaway, is that if you get caught up in the numbers and we won't go into the FOMO discussion, but if you get caught up in the numbers and you get sucked into the day-to-day fluctuations, of which there are many,
you go crazy.
You will have a bad time.
You'll go crazy.
Yeah, you'll go crazy. And we've had moments, like you and I have moments, mostly privately, where we just go crazy, where I just like, how, like, what is happening? Why? Like, it's BS. Like, we will have our moments, but it's
fun.
I'm glad I have a friend like you, and it's fun. Yeah. I think if you just focus on having fun and meeting people, and you'll have a blast. Like, this is some of the most fun I've ever had my whole life. Thanks for coming on, Primal. I had a great time today.
Thank you for having me on your channel, Julian.
If you ever want to learn more about Japanese Pokemon cards and you want to make friends, connections, you can join our Discord, discord.gg/okJLUV. Otherwise, like and subscribe, leave a comment, let us know your thoughts, and make sure to go follow over at twitch.tv/okJLUV as well, where I live stream and have these discussions pretty much every single week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.